Did you know there's an island where the soil is literally 50% human ash? What about the fact that there's a place so cursed that the Indian government legally prohibits anyone from entering after sunset? Today, we're counting down the 35 most absolutely terrifying abandoned places on Earth that'll make you grateful for your cozy, ghost-free bedroom. Number 35. Body Ghost Town, USA. Starting off our countdown with something that's more Wild West museum than nightmare-inducing terror. Body was once a booming gold mining town in California with 10,000 residents, 65 saloons, and apparently more gunfights than a Clint Eastwood movie marathon. The town was abandoned in the 1940s when the gold ran out, but here's the thing. It's been preserved in what they call arrested decay. That means everything looks exactly like people just walked away yesterday, except yesterday was 80 years ago. You can peer through windows and see tables still set for dinner, newspapers from 1940 still sitting on counters, and children's toys scattered on bedroom floors. While it's definitely eerie walking through a perfectly preserved ghost town, it's more cool historical sight than run screaming into the night. The most dangerous thing you'll encounter is probably a very judgmental tumbleweed. Number 34. Humberstone, Chile. Moving on to something that proves the desert doesn't forget. Humberstone was once a thriving saltpeter mining town in Chile's Atacama Desert, home to 3,700 people who thought they'd found their fortune in white gold. The town was abandoned in 1960 when synthetic alternatives made saltpeter mining obsolete, leaving behind an entire community frozen in time by the desert's preserving climate. What makes it creepy is how perfectly everything is preserved. You can still see children's shoes lined up in the school, theater seats waiting for audiences that will never come, and a swimming pool that once brought joy to families now filled only with sand and memories. The desert wind creates this constant low moaning sound as it moves through the empty buildings. It's like Mother Nature decided to turn an entire town into a museum of lost dreams. But at least the climate keeps the corpses. Wait, there are no corpses. That we know of. Number 33. Tianducheng, China. Here's where urban planning meets identity crisis. Tianducheng was supposed to be a replica of Paris, complete with a 108-meter-tall Eiffel Tower and Haussmannian architecture. Developers thought, you know what China needs? Fake France.
One of the strangest real estate stories you may ever see. Entire cities designed to look like Paris, so why doesn't anybody want to live there?
Built for 10,000 residents, only about 2,000 people actually moved in, making it a ghost town cosplaying as the City of Light. Walking through Tianducheng is like being in a fever dream where you're in Paris, but everything feels slightly wrong, like when you're dreaming and can't quite remember where you left your pants. The fake Eiffel Tower overlooks empty French-style cafes and abandoned Parisian boulevards where tumbleweeds speak Mandarin. It's not terrifying so much as deeply unsettling, like realizing you've been eating artificial vanilla your entire life. Number 32. The Starjet Roller Coaster, New Jersey, USA. Sometimes Mother Nature decides your amusement park needs a different kind of thrill. Toba, the Starjet roller coaster in Seaside Heights, became famous for all the wrong reasons when Hurricane Sandy tossed it into the Atlantic Ocean in 2012. For months, this bright yellow and green coaster sat partially submerged in the waves, creating one of the most surreal post-apocalyptic images ever captured. It looked like someone had asked, what if we combined a theme park with Atlantis? The answer was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. While it's since been removed, for a brief time, New Jersey had a roller coaster that offered the ultimate water ride. Whether you wanted it or not, the most dangerous part wasn't the loops or drops, it was the risk of drowning while trying to ride it. Number 31. Wellington Avalanche Disaster Site, USA. Moving on to a place where nature showed no mercy. The Wellington Avalanche Disaster Site in Washington State marks where 96 people died in 1910 when a massive avalanche buried 2 trains during a blizzard. The trains were stuck for days in increasingly dangerous conditions before a lightning-triggered avalanche sent millions of tons of snow crashing down at 2 a.m. Survivors described hearing the mountain roar like 1,000 freight trains before everything went silent. Today, you can still find pieces of the trains and personal belongings scattered through the forest. Hikers report an overwhelming sense of sadness in the area.
I'd say it's about a quarter of a mile this way, the small little town of Wellington.
and some claim to hear the distant sound of train whistles echoing through the mountains on quiet winter nights. Number 30. Sattler Theater, Buffalo, New York.
There's big plans for the Sattler Theater on Broadway, but for tonight, owners and designers of the building.
Here's where Broadway dreams went to die. The Sattler Theater was once Buffalo's crown jewel, featuring vaudeville acts and silent films for audiences dressed to the nines. But like many grand theaters, it fell victim to television and changing entertainment habits. Abandoned since the 1970s, the theater has become a time capsule of decay. The ornate ceiling has partially collapsed, revealing the building's bones like a beautiful corpse. Velvet seats are covered in decades of dust and debris, while the stage where performers once dazzled audiences now hosts only shadows and silence. Urban explorers report hearing phantom applause and seeing figures moving in the balcony boxes.
It was originally probably like a dramatic theater.
Whether it's ghosts or just pigeons with theatrical aspirations, the Sattler Theater proves that some performances never truly end. They just change venues to the afterlife. Number 29. Hotel del Salto, Colombia. Sometimes the most beautiful places hide the darkest secrets. Hotel del Salto sits perched on the edge of Tequendama Falls in Colombia, offering breathtaking views of a 515-foot waterfall. It was built in 1928 as a luxury getaway for wealthy visitors who wanted to experience the power and beauty of the falls up close. The hotel was abandoned in the 1990s when pollution from Bogota turned the Bogota River toxic, making the falls less majestic wonder of nature and more poisonous death cascade. But the hotel's reputation was already tarnished by something much darker. The combination of the towering waterfall and the hotel's isolated location made it a tragically popular spot for people to end their lives. Local legends say the spirits of those who died at the falls still roam the abandoned hotel corridors. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, standing in those empty rooms while staring at the thundering waterfall below is guaranteed to give you chills. Number 28. Sanjai Houses, Taiwan. Welcome to what happens when architects have fever dreams about the future. The Sanji pod houses were built in the 1970s as a futuristic resort community, featuring UFO-shaped pods that looked like something from the Jetsons had a baby with a space station. Construction was halted due to financial problems and a series of mysterious accidents and deaths that occurred during building. Workers reported feeling watched, tools would disappear, and several construction workers died in what locals claimed were unnatural accidents. The pod-shaped buildings were demolished in 2010, but for decades they sat empty like an alien landing site that nobody wanted to claim. Visitors described the sensation of being in a place that didn't belong on Earth, where the architecture itself seemed to whisper that humans weren't meant to live in geometric pods. Sometimes the future is scarier than the past. Number 27. Kolmanskop, Namibia. Here's where the desert decided to redecorate. Kolmanskop was once a bustling diamond mining town in the Namib Desert, complete with a hospital, ballroom, school, and casino. For a brief period in the early 1900s, it was one of the richest places on Earth per capita. When the diamond deposits were exhausted, residents abandoned the town to the desert, and the Namib had some opinions about interior design. Sand has filled the buildings waist deep, creating surreal indoor dunes where living rooms have become beach scenes and hallways look like underground caves. Walking through Kolmanskop is like exploring an alternate reality where sand has gained sentience and decided to claim human civilization one room at a time. The most unsettling part isn't ghosts or monsters.
Promised that it would be something that I would really enjoy. He was absolutely right. This place, it really is fantastic.
It's the realization that nature always wins in the end, and it's incredibly patient about proving that point. Number 26. Ryugyong Hotel, North Korea. Sometimes a building becomes more famous for what it isn't than what it is. The Ryugyong Hotel in Pyongyang was supposed to be the world's largest hotel when construction began in 1987, with 105 floors and 3,000 rooms that would showcase North Korea's prosperity to the world. Instead, it became the world's largest unfinished building, earning the nickname Hotel of Doom. Construction stopped in 1992 due to economic problems, leaving behind a 1,083-foot-tall concrete pyramid that dominates Pyongyang's skyline like a monument to failed ambition. For years, the North Korean government pretended it didn't exist, airbrushing it out of official photos and maps. The building has no windows, no interior finishing, and according to experts, the concrete structure is so flawed it might not even be safe to complete. It's basically a 105-story concrete tombstone for dreams of grandeur. Number 25. Monsell Sea Forts, UK. Picture this. You're sailing through the Thames estuary when you see what looks like alien tripods rising from the sea. Congratulations, you've found the Monsell Sea Forts, Britain's abandoned maritime defense system from World War II. These concrete and steel structures were built to defend against German air raids, housing anti-aircraft guns and searchlights.
Blazing away at the German Luftwaffe aircraft who used the Thames like a huge silver funnel on a moonlit night.
After the war, they were abandoned to rust in the North Sea, creating one of the most surreal sights in British waters. The forts look like something from War of the Worlds, especially on foggy days when only their tops are visible above the mist. Pirate radio stations operated from some of them in the 1960s, but now they're home only to seabirds and the occasional urban explorer, brave enough to climb aboard rusty platforms surrounded by churning seas. They're not haunted by ghosts. They're haunted by the industrial might of a war that ended decades ago. Number 24. Dhanushkodi, India. Here's where nature showed an entire town who was really in charge. Dhanushkodi was once a thriving fishing town and pilgrimage site at the southeastern tip of India, known as the End of the Bow in Hindu mythology. On December 22, 1480, a devastating cyclone completely destroyed the town, killing over 1,800 people in a single night. The cyclone was so powerful it changed the geography of the area, and the town was never rebuilt. Today, Dhanushkodi is officially classified as a ghost town by the Indian government. Walking through the ruins, you'll find the skeletal remains of the railway station, church, and various buildings slowly being reclaimed by sand and sea. Fishermen avoid the area at night, claiming to hear the voices of those who perished in the cyclone. Number 23. Gar Kundar, India. Sometimes a fortress becomes a monument to betrayal and bloodshed. Gar Kundar in Madhya Pradesh was built in the 14th century by the Kichi Chauhan dynasty, but its history is soaked in violence and treachery that would make Game of Thrones look like a family sitcom. The fort witnessed countless battles, sieges, and massacres over the centuries. The most brutal was in 1342 when Alauddin Khilji's forces stormed the fort, leading to a mass jauhar, self-immolation, by the women and children to avoid capture. The men died fighting to the last man. Local legends say the screams from that day still echo through the ruins on certain nights. The fort's walls are said to be stained with blood that won't wash away, no matter how many monsoons pound the ancient stones. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, standing in those crumbling corridors where thousands died violently is guaranteed to raise the hair on your arms. Number 22. Belchite, Spain. Here's where war decided to leave a permanent scar on the landscape. Belchite was completely destroyed during the Spanish Civil War in 1937, after a brutal 2-week battle that left the medieval town in ruins and hundreds dead. Instead of rebuilding, Francisco Franco ordered the ruins to be preserved as a monument to the heroism of his forces. A new town was built nearby, but the old Belchite remains frozen in time, a bullet-riddled testament to the horrors of war. Walking through the ruins today, you can still see bullet holes in walls, collapsed churches, and homes reduced to skeletal remains. The silence is overwhelming, broken only by the wind whistling through empty windows and shattered doorways. It's not just a ghost town, it's a graveyard where the graves are the size of city blocks. Number 21. Miranda Castle, Belgium. Sometimes fairy tales have darker endings than Disney would have you believe. Chateau Miranda, also known as Chateau de Noisy, was built in 1866 by the Liedekerk Beaufort family as their ancestral home, complete with 77 rooms and Gothic revival architecture that screamed, "Definitely not haunted, we promise." The family fled during World War I, and the castle was used as an orphanage until 1980. After that, it sat abandoned for over 30 years, slowly decaying into something that looked like it was designed by Tim Burton after a particularly dark nightmare. The castle's spires and towers created an imposing silhouette against the Belgian sky, while inside grand staircases led to nowhere, and ornate rooms filled with nothing but shadows and decay. Urban explorers reported feeling constantly watched and hearing children's laughter, echoing through empty corridors, remnants from its days as an orphanage or something more sinister. The castle was demolished in 2017, but locals say on foggy nights you can still see its ghostly outline on the hill. Number 20. Abandoned giant salamander farm, Guizhou, China. Here's where conservation efforts met absolute abandonment in the weirdest way possible. This facility in China was built to breed Chinese giant salamanders, which are living fossils that can grow up to 6 feet long and live for over 100 years. They're basically the dragons of the amphibian world, if dragons were slimy and ate fish. The breeding facility was abandoned due to funding issues and mismanagement, leaving behind empty concrete pools and rusted equipment that looks like something from a mad scientist's laboratory. What makes it particularly unsettling is that some of the salamanders were reportedly left behind when the facility closed. Walking through the abandoned pools and empty breeding chambers feels like exploring an aquatic apocalypse. The silence is broken only by dripping water and the occasional splash that might be a surviving salamander, or it might be something that's adapted to life in abandoned pools. Either way, it's not a sound you want to investigate too closely. Number 19. Spree Park, Germany. Welcome to the place where childhood dreams go to rust. Spree Park in Berlin was once East Germany's only amusement park, bringing joy to families during the Cold War era. After reunification, it struggled financially and was abandoned in 2002, leaving behind a perfectly preserved carnival nightmare. The park's giant Ferris wheel still stands motionless against the sky, its passenger cars swaying in the wind like hanged men. The carousel horses have been claimed by rust and graffiti, while roller coaster tracks disappear into overgrown vegetation like skeletal remains of some prehistoric beast.
But we will define new uses for the rides. For example, a roller coaster could be something like a treetop tail.
What makes Spree Park particularly creepy is how nature has begun to reclaim it. Trees grow through ride structures, ivy covers ticket booths, and wild animals have made homes in the abandoned attractions. It's like a post-apocalyptic fairy tale where the Magic Kingdom was overrun by a very patient forest. Urban explorers report that on windy days, some of the rides still creak and move slightly, creating the illusion that the park is trying to come back to life. Number 18. Ho Thuy Tien Water Park, Vietnam. Sometimes abandoned water parks look like the setting for a horror movie, and sometimes they look like dragons have taken over an aquatic theme park. Ho Thuy Tien near Hue, Vietnam, falls firmly into the second category, and somehow that's even more unsettling. Built in the early 2000s and abandoned shortly after due to poor planning and a lack of visitors, this water park features a massive concrete dragon that looks like it's emerging from a lake. The dragon's mouth was supposed to serve as the entrance to water slides, but now it just stares with empty eye sockets across abandoned pools filled with murky green water. The jungle has begun reclaiming the park, with vines covering the dragon's scales and trees growing through water slide tubes. What makes it particularly eerie is that local kids still use it as a swimming hole, so you might encounter actual people in this abandoned dragon's lair. The contrast between the massive mythical beast sculpture and the tropical decay creates an atmosphere that's equal parts mystical and deeply unsettling. Number 17. Severall's Hospital, England. Here's where Victorian medical practices met 20th century abandonment, creating a perfect recipe for nightmares. Severall's Hospital in Essex opened in 1913 as the second Essex County Asylum, designed to house up to 1,250 patients with mental health conditions. Like many institutions of its era, Severall's had a dark history of treatments that we now recognize as torture, electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and isolation treatments that would make medieval dungeons look humane. The hospital finally closed in 1997, but the buildings remained, filled with the echoes of decades of human suffering. Urban explorers report that Severall's is one of the most actively haunted locations in England.
I believe we saw a garage hidden amongst the trees, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to get out of here and we're going to go and check that out before we say goodbye to you.
Visitors describe hearing screaming, seeing figures in hospital gowns wandering the corridors, and feeling an overwhelming sense of despair in certain rooms. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, walking through abandoned psychiatric hospitals where thousands of people suffered is guaranteed to affect your mental state. The building's been partially demolished, but the remaining structures continue to draw paranormal investigators and urban explorers who are braver than they are smart. Number 16. Orpheum Theater, USA.
Today we are exploring a pretty cool theater. I've been to
Sometimes the show doesn't go on, but the theater remembers every performance that ever graced its stage. The Orpheum Theaters represent the death of vaudeville and the golden age of theater. These grand theaters, built in the early 1900s, hosted everything from traveling shows to early movies. When television killed vaudeville, many were abandoned, leaving behind ornate interiors that slowly decay like beautiful corpses dressed in velvet and gold. What makes abandoned theaters particularly unsettling is their acoustic design. They're built to amplify sound, which means every footstep, every breath, every creak of settling timber gets magnified and echoed back at you. Urban explorers consistently report hearing applause from empty auditoriums, music from silent orchestra's pits, and voices calling from empty balconies. Whether it's ghosts or just excellent acoustics playing tricks on your mind, abandoned theaters prove that some performances never truly end. Number 15. Eastern State Penitentiary, USA. Welcome to the birthplace of the modern prison system, and possibly the most psychologically damaging building ever constructed. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia opened in 1829 with a revolutionary approach to criminal rehabilitation: complete and total isolation.
Oh, it's so silent.
Prisoners were kept in individual cells for 23 hours a day with minimal human contact and absolutely no stimulation. They ate alone, worked alone, and when they were allowed outside for 1 hour daily, they wore hoods so they couldn't see or be seen by other inmates. The system was designed to force prisoners to confront their sins and achieve redemption through solitude. Instead, it drove many inmates completely insane. The prison closed in 1971, but visitors today can still feel the psychological weight of decades of forced isolation. Number 14. Ramu Prison, Estonia. Here's where incarceration met aquatic weirdness in the most unexpected way. Ramu Prison in Estonia was built in the 1950s to house political prisoners who were forced to work in nearby limestone quarries. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the prison was abandoned, and something interesting happened. The quarry filled with groundwater, creating an artificial lake. The prison buildings now sit partially submerged, creating an underwater ghost town that scuba divers explore like some kind of aquatic, post-apocalyptic adventure. You can literally swim through prison cells and see the beds, toilets, and bars beneath the water's surface. What makes it particularly unsettling is that you're essentially swimming through a place where people suffered for decades. The clear water gives you perfect visibility of the submerged prison structures, creating the sensation that you're floating through a nightmare. Number 13. Six Flags, Jazzland, New Orleans. Sometimes Mother Nature decides your amusement park needs a different kind of thrill ride. Six Flags Jazzland was damaged by Hurricane Katrina in 2005 and never reopened, leaving behind a post-apocalyptic wonderland that looks like the setting for a zombie movie. The park sat abandoned for years, slowly being reclaimed by Louisiana's aggressive vegetation and wildlife. Roller coaster tracks are covered in rust and vines, carnival games are filled with stagnant water, and the iconic Ferris wheel stands motionless like a giant monument to failed fun. What makes Jazzland particularly creepy is that nature has completely taken over. Alligators live in the flooded areas, snakes have made homes in ride structures, and wild boars roam the midway where families once bought cotton candy. The park has become a literal jungle where the most dangerous rides are now the ones operated by apex predators. It's less abandoned amusement park and more theme park designed by Charles Darwin after a particularly brutal mood. Number 12. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Kentucky, USA. Sometimes medical facilities become monuments to humanity's losing battle against disease.
Waverly Hills Sanatorium used to house tuberculosis patients in the 1900s.
Waverly Hills Sanatorium opened in 1910 as a tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky, during the White Death epidemic that was killing 1 in 7 Americans. At its peak, Waverly Hills housed over 400 patients suffering from tuberculosis, a disease with no known cure at the time. The treatments were medieval at best. Patients were subjected to experimental surgeries, including removing ribs and collapsing lungs to give them rest. Many patients never left alive. The hospital closed in 1961 when antibiotics made tuberculosis treatable, but by then, an estimated 63,000 people had died within its walls. The building sat abandoned for decades, becoming one of America's most notorious haunted locations. What makes Waverly Hills particularly terrifying is the body chute. a 500-foot tunnel used to secretly remove corpses from the building so living patients wouldn't see the constant stream of deaths. Hospital staff would load bodies onto a motorized rail system that carried them down the hillside away from public view. The combination of massive death toll, experimental medical procedures, and decades of abandonment has created an atmosphere so oppressive that even skeptics find themselves hurrying through the corridors. The building now operates as a haunted attraction because apparently some nightmares are too good not to monetize. Number 11, Sedlec Ossuary, Czech Republic. Here's where redecorating with human remains became an actual thing. The Sedlec Ossuary in the Czech Republic is technically not abandoned. It's still a functioning chapel, but it deserves a spot on our list because it's decorated with the bones of approximately 40,000 people. In the 14th century, the Black Death and Hussite Wars left so many corpses that the cemetery ran out of space. The solution? Exhume the older graves and use the bones as interior decoration. A half-blind monk arranged the bones into decorative patterns, creating chandeliers made of human skulls, coat of arms constructed from femurs, and garlands of finger bones. The ossuary includes a chandelier that contains at least one bone from every part of the human body.
And that one is said to hold at least one of every single of the bones in the human body.
A bone chalice, and pyramids of skulls that would make ancient Egypt jealous. What makes it unsettling isn't just the massive quantity of human remains, it's how artistically they've been arranged. It's simultaneously beautiful and deeply disturbing, like a cathedral designed by death itself. Number 10, Varosha, Cyprus. Here's where political conflict created a time capsule that nobody wanted to preserve. Varosha was once the crown jewel of Mediterranean tourism, a glittering resort district in Famagusta that attracted celebrities, royalty, and wealthy tourists throughout the 1960s and early 70s. When Turkey invaded Cyprus in 1974, Varosha's residents fled, expecting to return in a few days. Instead, the area was sealed off by the Turkish military and has remained a ghost town for nearly 50 years. Hotels, shops, restaurants, and homes have been frozen in time since 1974. Walking through the empty streets, which was recently allowed in limited areas, you can see 1970s cars rusting where they were parked, hotel pools filled with debris, and shop windows still displaying fashions from the Nixon administration. Nature has begun to reclaim the resort, with trees growing through building roofs and vegetation covering once pristine beaches. It's like someone hit the pause button on an entire city and forgot to press play for half a century. Number 9. Centralia, USA.
And what happened is somehow the fire got into that coal area, and all of a sudden it sparked a whole new problem.
Sometimes the earth itself decides to evict an entire town. Centralia, Pennsylvania has been burning underground since 1962, when a landfill fire spread to the abandoned coal mines beneath the town. The fire is expected to burn for another 250 years. What started as a community of over 1,000 people slowly dwindled as residents were forced to relocate due to toxic gases, unstable ground, and temperatures that could literally melt the soles of your shoes. Today, only about 5 residents remain in a town where smoke still rises from cracks in the ground, and the pavement is hot to the touch. Walking through Centralia feels like visiting hell's suburban office. Street signs mark roads that lead to empty lots where houses once stood. The famous graffiti highway, now covered but previously a stretch of abandoned Route 61, became a canvas for visitors brave enough to walk on ground that's literally on fire underneath. The most unsettling part isn't the visible smoke or hot ground, it's the realization that the earth beneath your feet is consuming itself, and there's absolutely nothing humans can do to stop it. Number 8. Hashima Island, Gunkanjima, Japan. Welcome to what happens when industrial ambition meets geographical isolation. Hashima Island, nicknamed Battleship Island for its ship-like silhouette, was once the most densely populated place on Earth, housing over 5,000 coal miners and their families on a space smaller than 16 football fields. The island was abandoned in 1974 when petroleum replaced coal as Japan's primary energy source. Residents were given just 3 hours to pack their belongings before the last boat left forever, leaving behind an entire concrete civilization. Today, Hashima looks like a post-apocalyptic movie set. Concrete apartment buildings rise like monoliths from the sea, their empty windows staring across the waves like hollow eyes. The island's structures are slowly crumbling from salt air and typhoon damage, creating a landscape that's equal parts impressive and terrifying. What makes it particularly unsettling is the scale. This isn't just an abandoned building, it's an abandoned world, a complete society preserved in concrete and decay. Number 7. Presidio Modelo, Cuba. Sometimes prison architecture becomes a monument to the most disturbing ideas about human control. Presidio Modelo was built in the 1920s based on Jeremy Bentham's panopticon design, a circular prison where guards in a central tower could observe all prisoners at all times without the prisoners knowing if they were being watched. The prison housed up to 6,000 inmates in conditions that can only be described as psychological torture. Fidel Castro himself was imprisoned here from 1953 to 1955, and he later called it a sinister place built to create madness in men. The prison was abandoned in 1967, but the circular cell blocks remain as a testament to humanity's capacity for systematic cruelty. Walking through the abandoned panopticon today, you can feel the psychological weight of the architecture itself. The circular design creates strange acoustic effects where whispers carry across the entire structure, and the central guard tower looms over everything like a concrete eye that never blinks. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, standing in a place designed to break human spirits is guaranteed to affect your mental state. Number 6. Belitz-Heilstätten Hospital, Germany. Here's where medical treatment met industrial-scale horror. Belitz-Heilstätten was built in the 1890s as a tuberculosis sanatorium, designed to treat Berlin's working class with the miracle cures of fresh air, sunlight, and experimental medicine that often killed more patients than it helped. The complex expanded over the decades, eventually becoming one of the largest hospital complexes in Europe. During both World Wars, it treated wounded soldiers, including a young Adolf Hitler who recovered from a leg wound there in 1916. After World War II, it served as a Soviet military hospital until 1994. The abandoned hospital complex spans over 600 acres and includes operating theaters still equipped with rusted surgical instruments, patient wards with beds arranged in perfect rows, and basement morgues that seem to echo with the sounds of procedures better left forgotten. Urban explorers report feeling overwhelming sadness in certain buildings and hearing the sounds of medical equipment that's been silent for decades. The combination of medical history, wartime trauma, and Soviet-era secrecy has created an atmosphere of dread that permeates every building in the complex. Number 5. Pennhurst State Asylum, Pennsylvania. Sometimes places designed to help people become monuments to humanity's capacity for systematic cruelty. Pennhurst State School opened in 1908 as an institution for people with intellectual disabilities, promising education and care for society's most vulnerable citizens. Instead, Pennhurst became a warehouse for human beings, where overcrowding, abuse, and neglect were the norm for over 70 years. Patients were restrained with leather straps, left in their own waste for days, and subjected to medical experiments without consent. The institution finally closed in 1987 after a series of investigations exposed the horrific conditions. Walking through the abandoned buildings today, you can still see restraint devices, patient records scattered on floors, and rooms where unspeakable things happened to people who couldn't defend themselves. The buildings themselves seem to remember the suffering they witnessed, with visitors reporting feeling overwhelming sadness.
People to do occupational therapy, physical therapy,
Hearing crying and screaming from empty rooms, and experiencing sudden temperature drops that can't be explained by natural causes. Pennhurst proves that sometimes the most haunted places are haunted by the living, not the dead. Number 4. Pripyat, Ukraine. Here's where the 20th century's greatest technological achievement became its most terrifying failure. Pripyat was built in 1970 to house the workers of the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant, creating a model Soviet city with 50,000 residents who believed they were living in the future. On April 26, 1986, Reactor 4 exploded during a safety test, releasing radioactive material across Europe and rendering Pripyat uninhabitable. Residents were told they were being evacuated for 3 days. They've never been allowed to return. Today, Pripyat is a radioactive time capsule where nature battles technology for control of an abandoned city. The famous Ferris wheel in the amusement park was never used. It was scheduled to open on May Day, just days after the disaster. Schools still have children's gas masks scattered on classroom floors. Hospitals contain radioactive medical equipment, and apartment buildings are slowly being consumed by vegetation. What makes Pripyat uniquely terrifying is the invisible threat.
is how invisible it is. You can't feel it. You can't smell it or see it.
You can't see, smell, or feel radiation, but it's everywhere, slowly killing the environment and anything that stays too long. Walking through Pripyat feels like exploring a beautiful corpse, visually stunning but deadly to the touch. It's a monument to human hubris and the price of playing with forces we don't fully understand. Number 3. Poveglia Island, Italy.
For the people that believe in ghosts, we're here to prove it right. Come on, let's go.
Welcome to what might be the most death-soaked piece of land on Earth. Poveglia Island near Venice has been a plague quarantine station, a mental hospital, and a dumping ground for human remains for over 600 years. Conservative estimates suggest that over 160,000 people have died on this small island, and their ashes literally make up 50% of the soil. During the Black Death, ships carrying plague victims would dock at Poveglia to die in isolation. Bodies were burned in massive pyres that burned continuously for decades. In the 1920s, the island was converted to a mental hospital run by a doctor who performed horrific experiments on patients using crude surgical tools and no anesthesia. The island is officially off-limits to tourists, but urban explorers who've made it to Poveglia report that the ground is literally mixed with human ash and bone fragments. Visitors describe feeling overwhelming despair, hearing voices speaking in different languages, and experiencing physical sensations of being touched by invisible hands. The soil is so saturated with human remains that when it rains, bone fragments and teeth wash up on the beaches. If you believe in hauntings, Poveglia has enough restless spirits to haunt an entire continent. Number 2. Bhangar Fort, India. Here's the only place on our list that's legally haunted. Bhangar Fort in Rajasthan is officially prohibited by the Indian government from being visited between sunset and sunrise. That's right, a government has legally recognized that this place is too cursed for nighttime visits. Built in the 17th century by Raja Bhagwant Das, Bhangar was once a thriving city with over 10,000 inhabitants. According to legend, the city was cursed by a spurned tantric, black magic practitioner, who warned that if any building in the city grew taller than his house, the entire city would be destroyed. When the palace was expanded and rose above his home, he cursed the city, and within a year, everyone was dead. The Archaeological Survey of India has posted official signs prohibiting entry after sunset, and local police patrol the area to ensure compliance. Visitors during daylight hours report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, hearing voices and music from empty buildings, and experiencing sudden temperature drops even in the desert heat.
So scary. It's completely dark and it really smells like there's animals, bats, pigeons, I don't know what, but there's a lot of crap.
The fort's empty palaces, temples, and streets create an atmosphere so oppressive that even skeptics find themselves hurrying to leave before dark. Number 1. La Isla de las Muñecas, Island of the Dolls, Mexico.
We're in Xochimilco, outside of Mexico City, and this is the Isle of the Dolls, La Isla de las Muñecas.
And here we have the most absolutely nightmare-inducing place on Earth. La Isla de las Muñecas sits in the canals of Xochimilco near Mexico City, covered with thousands of decaying, mutilated dolls hanging from trees like some kind of satanic Christmas decorations, designed by someone who really hates children. The island's story begins with Don Julian Santana Barrera, who became the island's caretaker in the 1950s. According to legend, he found the body of a young girl who had drowned in the canal under mysterious circumstances. Shortly after, he found a doll floating in the same water and hung it from a tree as a tribute to the dead child's spirit. But here's where it gets absolutely terrifying. Julian claimed the girl's ghost visited him, demanding more dolls to keep her company. For the next 50 years until his death in 2001, Julian collected dolls from garbage dumps, flea markets, and anywhere else he could find them, hanging them throughout the island. Many of the dolls are missing limbs, eyes, or hair, creating a landscape that looks like a serial killer's trophy room. Local visitors and urban explorers report that the dolls whisper to each other, turn their heads to follow people, and some have been seen blinking or moving their mouths. Whether it's the wind, deterioration, or something supernatural, the effect is absolutely terrifying. The island attracts thousands of visitors each year, but many leave within minutes because the atmosphere is so oppressive. What makes the Island of the Dolls the creepiest place on Earth isn't just the thousands of mutilated dolls or the tragic legend, it's the realization that one man spent half a century alone on an island, talking to ghosts and hanging dolls for an audience that might only exist in his imagination. It's a monument to isolation, madness, and the human need for companionship that went horribly, horribly wrong. And there you have it, the 35 most absolutely terrifying abandoned places on Earth that'll make you grateful for your boring, non-haunted neighborhood. From diamond towns reclaimed by desert sand to islands literally made of human ash. These places prove that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that actually happened. Which one of these places gave you nightmares just thinking about it? Let me know in the comments below, but maybe don't visit any of them unless you enjoy sleeping with the lights on for the rest of your life. And if you know any other abandoned places that are somehow even more terrifying than these, drop those in the comments too. We might just make a part 2, featuring places that are somehow even more nightmare-inducing. If this video made you check your locks twice and appreciate places that aren't actively trying to kill you with radiation, curses, or vengeful spirits, make sure to smash that like button. Subscribe to Fact Shock for more content that'll make you question why humans ever thought some of these places were good ideas, and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Thanks for watching, and remember, next time you're complaining about your hometown being boring, at least your local government hasn't legally prohibited you from being there after dark because of supernatural activity. Sometimes boring is exactly what you want. We'll see you in the next one, and hopefully it'll feature places where the biggest threat is bad Wi-Fi, not vengeful spirits or underground fires that have been burning since the Kennedy administration.